Hi, I'm Cassie, host of the Curiosity Junkie podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the subscribe button to follow us and receive new episodes each week. If you really enjoy the podcast and you're feeling generous, please hit the donate button. Today's guest is a clinical psychologist. Please welcome Dr. Jessica Waldron to the podcast.
Hi, Jessica. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yes, I'm excited. We are going to be talking about attachment styles today. And for those who are out there and have no idea what that is, you're going to learn so much. I'm excited to share this. So let's start with that, Jessica. What are attachment styles?
Yeah, it's simple and complex question. Well, like most things in the area of human psyche. So attachment styles kind of boiled down is a habitual pattern of relating to others, specifically like close or significant others. We're talking about those really significant relationships in our life, like a parent or a romantic partner, spouse, maybe a best friend, particularly around like the adolescent years when that's like, such a big part of your life. And mostly we're talking about how one responds relationally in these relationships around points of connection and disconnection. So as we talk more, it'll make more sense as I give examples. But basically, what do we do when we start to feel insecure or disconnected, or that sense of closeness or trust or safety with a partner feels threatened at all? So as a child, again, we'll talk more, but the attachment styles develop really early on, like right out the gate or right out the womb, I should say.
Okay, I wondered about that.
Yeah, so they start with that earliest relationship, typically with a mother, or it could be with a father or grandparent. But that mother child relationship is a really significant one, as I think most of us know, whether or not the mother was there or not, right? That relationship is significant. And so they start to develop these attachment styles. They tend to stay somewhat stable across our lives, although they can change. And so there are 4 different attachment styles that have come out of the research. The research started with children. We now understand that our attachment style, or this need to stay close or connected to one significant other, is a biological, innate survival need that we all as humans possess. So if anyone says they don't need anybody, they probably are just protecting their emotional, probably have been deeply wounded and are protecting themselves. But yeah, this is, survival. And we can understand it really clearly, like when we think about a newborn baby and a mother or a father or parent, of how that would be survival, food, water, basic needs, right? That baby needs to be like right on that parent, But we do find, even as adults, we still have this innate need to be close, to have a sense of security, to feel confident and secure going out into the world and feeling kind of secure and calm and at ease, even in our own experience of ourselves. So like I was saying, there's 4 different styles. The sort of ideal one is what we call secure attachment.
Okay.
And that is basically that your attachment person or figure, we'll call them, was available to you, right? So as a child, you cried, that person showed up and soothed you, whether that was a cry for food, a cry for comfort, a cry out of being scared. They were attuned to your needs and they met them. That's super regulating for a child.
Right.
And they develop this kind of calm sense of self. When you know you have that other person, which we'll refer to as kind of like a secure base, you feel more confident to go out into the world.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. You feel like, okay, it's very regulating to know that that person is accessible to you and offers reassurance and engagement and is soothing. And so then you're like, your insides feel all regulated and you feel good to go out into the world and be yourself. And you feel like your emotions make sense, because when you have an emotion and then someone is able to attune to it and meet that need and soothe that emotion, you're like, oh, well, it was validated, right? They were like, yeah, that makes sense. You were hungry. So here's some food. And you're like, oh, my emotions make sense. When someone doesn't validate that feeling, though, you start to get this internal confusion of your experience of emotions because you're like, I'm hungry, but no one's bringing me food. And am I not supposed to be hungry? Is being hungry bad? Why is my needs not important? Like all this complicated stuff starts getting wired in. So the secure attachment is the ideal one. And as we go from a child relationship into an adult relationship, again, that's like, I'm in a place of need or vulnerability or pain or hurt. I reach out to my partner, they respond, they're available, they engage with me. It helps regulate me. I feel calm, moving on, right? So you're able to, or if you even have a rupture in a relationship, because just if you have a secure attachment doesn't mean there's no ruptures, conflict, or whatever. You just feel more confident that like that doesn't mean the relationship's going to fall apart and this person's going to abandon you and leave you if there's tension.
You don't go to the worst case scenario.
Yeah, you're not panicking. You're like, okay, there's some conflict here. We're going to have to resolve it, but I'm not panicking that my like most important other is going to take off. So that's like the secure attachment, kind of what we're hoping for, and in a relationship or with a parent. Then the other three are under the bucket of insecure attachment styles. And so these are how we respond when we feel that threat to that closeness or connection with that significant other. But there isn't as much responsiveness, accessibility, reassurance, the things we need to feel calm. Those don't happen. How do we respond? How do we manage not getting that soothing and that thing that we're needing from that other person? So one way is what's called an anxious attachment. And so for that person who has an anxious attachment, when they feel that close other, that connection being threatened or whatever, they're glomming, right? They're reaching out to get anything to get a response from that person. What we'll call it is like attachment panic. It's literally like panic because it is like a survival thing. And so it literally is like, I have to do anything to get this person's attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the adult relationships, like that often looks like a partner who's criticizing, judging, yelling, calling a bunch of times, anything to get this non-responsive partner to respond, right? It's like poking the bear sometimes, like, and it could look other ways. It could be very like provocative or more, anything to just get this person close to me to soothe this inner anxiety and panic I'm experiencing. And then the second of the insecure is the avoidant attachment. So this person kind of does the opposite, right? So they've had the experience of having needs, reaching out to a close other, and those needs not being met. And the way they manage that internal panic is to suppress their needs. So it's okay. I don't need anybody. I'm just going to bury all that stuff because it's way too painful to have needs and not have somebody meet them, right? It's vulnerable, it's painful, it plays on our self-worth, it's dysregulating. So that person has sort of shut down, tried their best, buried that attachment system. And so they'll pull away, close up, shut down, be silent, like really pull away. So that's another way you can manage that. And then the last one is disorganized attachment. And so it's kind of like this really complicated mix of both, where you're reaching out for closeness, but then when the closeness comes, you avoid and kind of panic. So this one's a little more usually reflective of a little bit more of a traumatic, chaotic upbringing or something. So it's usually stems from pretty serious attachment trauma or things like that. And so when the person that you're trying to seek comfort and engagement from is also the person who's hurting you.
Right.
So you'll see that. And so that one, that's a painful one. They're all, they all have, they're all somewhat painful, but yeah. So those are the three insecure attachment styles.
So the base is a more secure attachment where the relationship, the other side of the relationship, you're confident that you're going to get through whatever. They're there to support you. You just feel secure. Anxious is more under that. Oh, everything feels traumatic. I'm afraid you're going to leave me. I'm afraid you don't like me. I'm afraid whatever, we go into some kind of weird
Mm-hmm.
spiral. Yes. Okay, I like that. I used to when I what I call becoming self-aware, when I first started identifying what was happening with me and really being in tune with what I was sending myself as a signal, I would call it wobbly. Like people would make me wobbly, and I could just like
Mm.
feel that this was going to create some sort of insecurity, some sort of something inside of me that didn't feel like, ooh, didn't feel stable. And so that's how
Yeah.
I identified it. But yeah, anxious, that would be it.
Yeah, anxious, insecure. Yeah, anything you can feel almost yourself get like almost untethered or ungrounded, dysregulated, and right in some way, however you label it, right? But starting to just bring that awareness of like, oh, something right there, just something happened, and something's being triggered in me.
Yes, yes. Okay, so what are certain attachment styles attracted to other attachment styles, or is that not a thing at all?
Um, I mean, there does tend to see, we do tend to see, and I see it quite a bit in the couples therapy, is an anxious and an avoidant attachment style together. Those play off of each other quite,
Lovely.
yeah. And so there's, well, let me think about kind of the mechanisms there. I mean, often the way we're thinking about adult relationships, particularly around these insecure attachments, is we're often looking to heal the wound from the problem parent.
Right. From the childhood crushing moment or whatever, yes, the
Yeah.
trauma. Okay.
Yeah. And so we're often drawn towards that as like this subconsciously, like we're not doing it consciously by any means, but to heal that wound or to satisfy that space that we never got from reaching out. So you could see how often an anxious attachment style develops from an avoidant other.
Ah,
The more they pull away, the more anxious I get, the more anxious I get, the more they pull away, the more it creates a spiral. So often there's like this initial thing that somehow brings these two together.
mm-hmm.
There's a familiarity to it for them,
Yeah.
but then it perpetuates the insecure attachment for sure, right? It just feeds off of itself, and everyone's like, I don't know, everyone's triggered,
Right.
everyone's panicking. Like this person's coming at me, needing more and more or critical, and I want to go more and more in my hole. And the more I'm in my hole, the more there. And so it's a hard one, but it's once people can recognize, oh, that's what's happening, that's
Mm,
what's showing up here, it can be like a big relief because it's not necessarily that the two of us at our core like don't want to be together, don't have the capacity for love and connection. It's just that we're like stepping on each other's like vulnerable buttons, right? Like just this horrible thing where we just end up right in those spots, And so once you realize like, oh, now we just need to undo some of these unhelpful ways of managing disconnection so that
mhm.
we don't exacerbate this cycle, then you can start correcting and getting underneath and calming all of the attachment panic that the relationship is stirring for both people. So,
Right. Wow.
yeah.
That kind of brings me to actually my next question. I was thinking, how does knowing what your attachment style is help
Mm-hmm.
you in relationships? Like, how do we use it to help us?
Yeah, for sure. I think it helps immensely. Like coming in, having that awareness helps you sort of know, oh, like you were saying, right? You're aware, your self-awareness journey or whatever. You started to be able to recognize when you were getting wobbly.
Mhm.
So when you can start to recognize when you're being triggered in that point of awareness and pause, you have a choice to have a different reaction or to respond in a different way. When we don't know, we're just like in it and we're just reacting. And suddenly we're like screaming at our partner or putting them down. And we're like, I don't know why I'm doing this, and no one knows what's happening. But in the awareness, we have the choice to say, oh, I see what's coming up. This insecure attachment likely doesn't stem from the current relationship. It may, but usually these are often stemming from our early childhood. Oh, this is coming up because I have this wiring about people not being dependable in there, and I'm panicking. I want this person to be close. I need that reassurance. Let me pause. This is not reflective of the relationship in front of me. I can name what's happening and I can choose to have a different response, or even just tell my partner rather than just lash out or shut down. I can say, like, I'm feeling panicked. Like, I really want to like do all these things. Like, I need you to show up for me right now, or I need you to help, being able to have like some capacity just to name it and ask for what you need versus going into the automatic reaction that ends up pushing the other person away more. It's helpful. So yeah, it's super important.
It is. Okay. Which is good to know. And then I guess you're going to answer this one because I was going to say, like, how does it affect like all of our relationships? But it's really just the more like parental and the love, the like big loved ones. Because I think about a best friend, you love that person almost like family. So like, would it show up in siblings and all of that too?
Yeah, it can, I definitely think it can, particularly at certain points in your life, right? So if we're all really wired to at least have this one other person that we feel attached, that's there for us, engaged, that can look differently at different parts of our life. So yes, typically it's a parent, and then a spouse or romantic partner that we have that closer relationship with. But like I was saying, like adolescence, that could be best friend. Because it's not as much about the family. Now the friends become the really important unit. It can for sure be a sister. I've had people where they had really troubled relationships with the parents, and yes, that formed that, but then the sister also became this attachment because now it's just the two of us. Right. We had to kind of write off the parents because it's very obvious that they don't have the capacity. So we're in this together. But then what happens if that person starts pulling away? So I think it can stem to other relationships. But yeah, and you might see little things pop up in other relationships, but you probably won't see the same level of that kind of panic. You might see kind of unhealthy ways of responding in interpersonal relationships around similar things, but probably not the same intensity where that person's like, it's survival mode for them.
Right. So here's the question, just kind of popped into my head. It's talking about siblings. Let's say, there's 3, 4, 5 siblings. Will they all have the same attachment style based on the parent? Or is it like, when I think about it, like typically there are different relationships, child-parent relationships go on within a family dynamic, not intentionally, not good or bad, but they just kind of happen. So you could have siblings who are avoidant and insecure, like all of it in one family, couldn't you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, different time periods bring out different things in people too. So just using the mother or, primary caregiver, I've heard instances where, there's like 3 kids, but, after like this person, the mom really suffered with postpartum depression. Okay. She may not have that with the other 2. So she was very unable to show up emotionally and engage, and so different things can happen. Sometimes that relationship with the oldest kid and the parent can be, it's a new coming into parenthood. It's stirring up all of this stuff. They're not able to handle it. It's overwhelming. Or the opposite, super close. And then when the other kids come along, they're not available. Or, later on, kids also have other options. They have older siblings to feel secure with. They have, so I could stir in there's a lot of different factors of why one parent, you have kids, right?
Yes. Yeah. I have 2.
It's like they're different.
Right.
Like, so because of one's maybe own personal history or own comfort or own attachment, they might attach easier to one baby than the other. Because the other one kid might bring up some stuff and it's like, woo, or one kid doesn't hit on those nerves, right? It's like another significant relationship. So yeah, for sure, it can look different.
Yeah. Yeah, that just kind of popped into my head because I thought, oh yeah, family dynamics. And when you think about siblings, and then if you're relying on that, if there's a certain sibling you connect with, maybe it is because they're familiar like the parent. And I like that word familiar because I think we tend to stay in cyclical patterns because they are familiar, not necessarily good for us, but they feel like we know this. I know what to expect. I know how this is going to go, even though it may not be good. It's familiar. It's comfortable.
uh Totally. Totally. I know that's how we find ourselves, like, how did this happen again? Someone will end a long relationship or even a marriage or whatever, and like come out and like go start dating and be like, like, oh my gosh, how am I back? How did I do this? And so it's okay. You have to just acknowledge, again, that's where that awareness piece comes in, and that you're always tuning in to like, what's the motivators, or how do I feel, in this relationship? Does it spark that same wobbly feeling, stepping back? Is that because the person really is not there, really is not accessible, and this is not a good idea for me? Or is it actually they are, my old stuff is just coming up and I need to regulate myself and allow that person to show up in a different way and have a new experience? So
We talk about this like you can identify it and be aware, but you also need someone to help you get to the other side of it.
yeah, I'll just add to that by saying, if I think we often, because a lot of this stems from the early childhood relationships, many of us, if it wasn't, this blatant abuse or something that was very apparent that it was toxic or that our parents couldn't show up, we will tend to hold on to an idealized version of, the parents, because that's, again, protective in a way. That's a hard one to. So sometimes when we're doing this attachment work, and we're recognizing where our anxious, avoidant, whatever disorganized attachments stem from, we're kind of going back and realizing, oh, that, yeah, actually did mean more. And that person actually wasn't available. And I made the narrative of why, they were so great at their career or whatever it was that was keeping, that can be a lot to unpack for people.
Yes.
That can be very dysregulating, a kind of getting a new understanding of, actually there was a child there that needed more, that didn't get it, and recognizing that and feeling that pain or that grief for your own self as a child, of what you might have not gotten, and it still doesn't mean your childhood was horrible or your parents were horrible, like, no, but just even realizing, oh, I was lonely, or I cried alone in my room a lot, or I suppressed a lot of things I needed just so that I could be valued, because being calm and cool and whatever was valued in my family, and being emotional wasn't, whatever it was. So yeah, I would say sometimes doing that can bring up some hard stuff for people that they haven't thought of before, and therapy can be helpful in making some space to process stuff. And I think therapy is particularly helpful if you found yourself in a dynamic where you have two people with insecure attachment styles that are playing off of each other, because that is hard to do on your own.
Oh gosh.
Because you both trigger these really these are strong things, and we're stepping, these are hard to you're dysregulated, which means it's hard to do really rational work or help, support each other when we're both. So I would say couples therapy, like if you're already in that relationship and you recognize it, you're like, okay, we should probably get someone to help us work through. And we have the awareness, but we sort of need a third party to help us regulate, hear things, like hold all of that for us, because it's too much on their own.
Absolutely. And even just being able to start when you're in that space, kind of like what you were saying, starting the conversation around, hey, I'm being triggered, and if you're both aware of it, what you come to therapy and someone can help you have I don't want to call them safe words, but conversations that feel safe and secure when
Mm-hmm.
you're in anxious mode.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot of the work, right? So first, a model of couples therapy that I like, and that, for anyone interested in doing more work based around these attachment stuff, is emotionally focused couples therapy. So it's a lot based in the attachment. And one of the first things you're doing is recognizing what's the negative cycle. And it's usually around these like insecure attachments. So when this person does this, I respond like this, then react like this, and then they do, and we identify what's the cycle that's been showing up that's been impacting the ability for the couple to feel connected, secure, bonded. So first you figure it out, then you kind of dig in and heal some wounds. Usually there's events that happen, that really hit people's nerves, of fear of abandonment or rejection or whatever. I was going through a hard time, had a miscarriage or something, and you still went on your work trip and left me at home by myself, something, things like where I can't get over that. I can't feel safe that you're going to be there. That's such a hard time for me or whatever. So you'll want to go in and kind of heal this, and in the therapy, helping them have a new experience of going into the more vulnerable emotions, because usually neither person is seeing what's actually happening, which is like fear, sadness, pain, right? Because usually if we see that, we can have a lot more empathy and compassion. But when we just see like aggression and anger and blaming and shutting down and silent treatment, we're like not seeing what's actually happening. So we can't go in and actually tend to what actually needs. So the therapy helps get underneath all the noise and help them bond over the real stuff and show the vulnerability, and then create a new cycle of relating around these events of disconnection, like that are actually effective, that they leave feeling more bonded after, not more disconnected. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's good stuff. How would someone go about finding out what their attachment style is?
Yeah. So sometimes it can be really obvious, like even just listening to this conversation now, like, oh, that's me, or oh, yeah, that's
Right.
me. But sometimes it's not clear. And sometimes it's certain situations provoke different reactions. You may not always come out as the anxious type, but maybe certain times, or maybe, you start, I don't know, it could be look a little differently. But yeah, we were, this attached book is a great one. It's about adult attachment. So I think we're mostly talking about adult attachment here. There's also a lot of literature on like parent to child attachment, a lot of good books and stuff like that. Like, it's never too late if you've recognized, oh, I think me and my child have an insecure attachment, or my child has this. There's lots to do to help move that towards, or repair that to a secure. But adult attachment, this book, Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, is a great starting point for, I think it's really like, they simplified it and gives a lot of good examples. And it comes with a little questionnaire to help you identify what your attachment style is. So I think that that's a good place to start, reading a little bit more and reading some stories. Oh, that sounds like me, or that sounds like my partner. I think it also includes a questionnaire about your partner. So if you are in a relationship, you can kind of assess from certain behaviors and be like, oh, that's, that they tend to err more towards the avoidance style. Oh, this makes sense. Oh, whatever. So I think that's a good place to start. It's a good resource.
Yeah. That's one I read, oh gosh, it's probably been about 3, maybe 4 years ago. And yeah, that was in the becoming self-aware, and I was like, I wonder why I keep doing this. And I don't even remember how it came up, but I found it, and it was huge in just helping me identify some of the stuff that I was continuing to do that kept me in this weird pattern of dysfunction, is what I would call it. Yeah.
Totally. I think it can be, I mean, for some, like I said, sometimes it's hard to recognize it in yourself. And then, but sometimes it's so freeing. It's like, oh, there's a framework for why this keeps happening, and there's something I can do about it.
Yes,
So,
I think that's the good thing. It kind of creates some hope. You're not stuck in this cyclical pattern of not living the way you want to live or being in the relationship you want to be in. There are things going on inside of you that you just need to like pay attention to, do some work with, and you can change that. On that note, are there any things that, or steps or practices that we could kind of do to help get us to a more secure
mm,
attachment style?
yeah. I think therapy is definitely one of those, right? Getting in there and opening up about what's kind of the stuff that's living in your body, or in your emotional body too, right? That's all of us. We all do. I mean, no one came out unscathed. Sorry to report.
We
Like,
all have
regardless,
yeah.
we all came out with some stuff, which is, interesting. So it's just starting to understand, kind of digging into, okay, I recognize I have insecure attachment. Why? What's coming up? Is there healing that has to happen? Again, like sometimes we have to process grief about things we didn't get
Oh,
in
yes.
relationships, and that was painful, whether or not we've allowed to recognize that before. Now we are. So a lot of things, hurts and pain, like they get housed in our body, and we have to release, process, right?
Right.
These were things often that happened before we had the cognitive capacity for that type of understanding and thinking, and now we do.
Right.
um, so I would say also learning how to emotionally regulate, right? So you're not the child anymore. It's time to recognize what comes up for you, but also to really start to develop more emotionally, right? So building a sense of self, a sense of security within, asserting your needs, having emotional awareness, like this is coming up for me, I feel wobbly, whatever it is, taking responsibility. Um, because we often put those things on the other person. You're
Mm-hmm.
doing that, and it's like time to take some we have to take responsibility for what's coming up. I mean, I love mindfulness for like everything, but the more you practice mindfulness, the more you're tuning in. So a person with an insecure attachment likely tended to tune out to others
Mm-hmm.
because it was survival, right? And that person wasn't always accessible. So it's like, I'm hyper vigilant to, are you close? Are you not? I'm aware. Are you upset with me? Are you not upset with me? Like, are you happy? Can I move closer? Do I have to move away? And a lot of times people were managing around like parents' moods or emotional availability and stuff. If you had the really reactive parent or whatever, you're so focused on staying close and keeping the regulating the other or not disrupting, you didn't spend a lot of time inside,
Mm-hmm.
um, just with yourself and who am I? What do I like? And you didn't have that freedom necessarily to do that because you didn't feel secure, right? So the person with the secure attachment, they're comfortable. Even if the parent or whatever is like they like know that person's available and they need them. So they're out exploring and doing things and being creative and curious and whatever. And
Right.
because they're coming home to their comfy little secure home base.
Right.
Or if
Yes.
something goes awry while they're out in the world, they know who they can call, or that mom's going to pick them up, or that person will be there if they pick up the phone, kind of a thing. And that was very regulating. Um, so I like mindfulness for the practice of starting to tune into your own internal experience and really starting to connect with yourself.
Yeah. I like that too. I really do. The mindfulness piece. You can do it in everything.
It's good for everything. The other thing that's super helpful, like if you are not in a relationship right now, and you notice that you have an insecure attachment, I mean, the ideal thing is that you look for partners with secure attachment styles. So
Right.
that's the most corrective experience you can have, is having a new attachment person that is accessible, does offer reassurance, is engaged. Right? That can really heal. It won't completely heal, a parent fully or something, but it will calm you in the present and you will really be regulating. So ideally you find a partner that has a secure attachment that can show up in the way that you're needing, and calm all of that. I will say for someone tending to find in these anxious avoidant couples dynamics, those tend to feel more exciting at first than dating somebody with a secure attachment. Not that that person's not attractive and fun. It's just the ingredients create a lot more, I don't know how they get like ruffling and excitement, and are they in insecurity, which insecurity at first is exciting, and you're thinking about it all the time. Like a lot of times if you are dating in a more securely attached person, it's like doesn't have that same like, I can't stop, I can't sleep, I can't eat, I get thinking about this person. Don't run away from those too soon.
Right. No, it's hilarious because as you're talking, I'm like, oh my God, I totally identify, and I'm sure the listening audience can too, because we've all been there. And I will say that when you do come to that secure relationship, when you find it, it is a completely different feel. But you have to be looking for it. You have to be searching for that and being aware when somebody is igniting that anxious, or it's so huge. But it is doable because I have done it, and it does
Yeah.
feel completely different. And I can see where it would almost feel, and I hate using the word boring, but I'm struggling to think of a better word, but it's so secure and so safe that you just don't have it, and you feel
Mm-hmm.
quite comfortable. You trust 100%. I'm just going to say it's almost kind of weird because it's not like anything you've ever experienced before. And so you kind of start, I did. I kind of was like questioning it, like, well, this is weird. Like, is this right? Is this,
Totally.
the anxious wants
Totally.
to come up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally understand. I had that experience. Like, in the earlier dating, of course, you tend to be drawn towards whatever.
Yes.
And so I remember when I first started dating my husband, I was like, I felt so calm and at ease with him, like in my core and in my gut. And my head was just like, I don't know, like he's just too happy. Like he's too happy. Like, it's just like all this noise.
Yes.
Um, and I
Yeah.
was so grateful that I allowed the part of me that felt good to just keep going and just kind of listen to the noise, and would kind of get a little twisted, but then like didn't, because I was like, okay. And then you get to that point where like, oh, this is what this is, yeah. Thank God, just like thank you, whoever like let me stay to learn, what that was like and why that's so wonderful, because it can be easy, right, to write it off,
Mhm.
or, to get pulled in, because like we were talking about earlier about familiar and unfamiliar. It's unfamiliar if you
Yes.
have the history of, other types of relationships.
Yeah.
So,
And I think too, our mind tends to want to protect us. And it's saying, hey, this doesn't feel familiar. We need this because we know
mhm.
it. And that's why the stuff starts coming up, and we brain chatter. Ah,
I know. I know. Which another reason why I love mindfulness, just
yes.
to calm everything down and also to help you tune into other parts of your experience. Because if we're just thinking that our thoughts are what guides us, we're that's gonna be confusing because we can basically think anything. So
Hmm.
that's why people end up in circles thinking, well, I think it's like all of the real information is housed elsewhere from this overdeveloped brain, right? Emotions, what our body is telling us, so much information there. So mindfulness also just helps broaden that, where we are able to tune in to a lot more than just the thinking part, which is so annoying sometimes, our brains, at least mine
Absolutely.
is. I was like,
Absolutely.
all the time.
So let's do just quickly, because I
Yeah.
know you're a busy woman. When we say mindfulness, what
Hmm.
are you saying with the practice of mindfulness for someone who really isn't aware of that?
Yeah. So, I mean, mindfulness can look a lot of different ways. There is like formal mindfulness, which is a lot of what people think about with meditating, and it can, meditation. So you're sitting down, you're closing out all of the noise, you're likely closing your eyes. A lot of people like to use many of the apps that will guide you through mindfulness or meditation exercise, anywhere from 5-10 minutes to people meditate for hours, but most people are in the 5 to 30 minute range, I would say. Yeah, 5, great. I started at 3. I remember thinking that was so hard to sit for 3 minutes. It just makes me laugh now. But yeah, so what it is gearing you to do is kind of like what I was just talking about, is it allows you, often our minds, right, they're in the past, they're in the future. Both of those past thinking can sometimes lead us to feel more depressed, right? Even if it was a positive event, then we're no longer have it, or things didn't go well, we regret. Future tends to lead us to feel a little more anxious. We're worried what's going to happen. What we find in the research is if we are able to build more of a muscle to bring our awareness and attention into the present moment, we're much happier, even if the present moment isn't great. Like, even if you're going through a hard time, being more in the present moment, you will feel better than if you are like in all the other wherever places that we go. So what a lot of the exercises do, and it's common to like cue you into your breathing. So you're just, your mind will wander and you come back to noticing the sensation of breathing. Your mind wanders, right? Or physical sensations or body scan where you're kind of moving through your body. And there's all sorts of exercises. And some are more like visual exercises, which take you kind of out of your body. Like the ones I was kind of talking about is taking you in your experience, just in that moment. What does the air in the room feel like on your skin? What does it feel like where your fingertips are touching the tops of your thighs? What do you notice? Very kind of just with yourself. We find that can calm the mind and also just tune you into other things that are going on in your body. Then there's like less formal mindfulness, which is like mindful walking, mindful, but I like, when I'm talking about, usually talking about people sitting down and practicing more formal, especially if it's unfamiliar to you, to build up that, what we call it, like a muscle, like a mind muscle.
Yes. Yeah. No, and that's, I think of the meditation and the kind of coming back to right here now and thinking about the breath going through the nose and, just staying right here. Connected.
Yeah. When we were talking earlier about creating that space to respond, like rather than react, that's kind of what mindfulness helps you do. Oh, I'm noticing that I'm being triggered, right? My partner's out of town, or they left and they didn't come up and give me a kiss goodbye. And I notice, oh, that's bringing up that stuff for me, right? When we build that muscle to be more in tune, we can pause for a second. And when we can pause, we can respond how we choose.
Yes. Instead of reacting.
Right. Which may not get us where we want to go. So having the opportunity, maybe we will still react the same, but at least we chose.
Right.
At least we had a sense of just, autonomy or control in that. I still may not do the best thing because, we're not perfect. And sometimes we just don't want to do the right thing.
Right. And that's the other piece, is we are human. So even when we're aware, it's still, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. So I have plenty of people who are like, I know I should have done that different, but I just really didn't want to, and I can relate. It's like, I can know exactly what I'm doing and know it's like so not what I should be doing, but I'm just making that choice right now. So whatever. Yeah. But at least we made a choice. At least we had awareness.
That's right. It's an awareness, and you chose. You didn't just like let stuff happen.
Yeah. Well, in that, you're taking responsibility to that your partner is not going to respond the way you want them to respond. That was your choice. Because you chose to engage in the less effective behavior, which isn't going to get you what you want. So you can't go pouting when you don't get what you want, because that that's not going to get you where you want. But you wanted to have your little externalizing moment, then fine. Or you wanted to go in your hole, fine. But don't expect your partner to show up the way you really need them in that moment, anyways.
If you chose that path, they're not going to choose another. You're gonna react.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
So,
Jessica, as always, I love talking with you. I know you need to get on with your day and your practice. What are some ways people can connect with you? I always love people to be able to connect. I follow you on Instagram. Great stuff. Thank you for putting it out there.
yeah. So I have Instagram is just Dr. Jessica Waldron or at Dr. Jessica Waldron. My website is the same thing, just drjessicawaldron.com. I think those are the two main places to find me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, go to Dr. Jessica Waldron's website. You have some great articles on there, some things to think about. And I've popped on there a couple of times, and I share like
Nice.
little snippets in my group and send the link to your website. So
Oh,
hopefully,
thank you.
yeah,
Love
because
that.
I think it's so important to share this information that might help someone just start down the path of making changes to make their life better. So,
Oh, that's so great. Yeah. Well, thank you.
thanks for
All
coming on
right.
again.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime.
Well, thank you to everyone for tuning in, listening, watching. Stay safe, and I will see you again next week.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the subscribe button to follow us and receive new episodes each week. If you really enjoy the podcast and you're feeling generous, please hit the donate button.